Hey, welcome back everybody to RippleLIVE, the show where we answer your questions about Final Cut Pro 10 and related topics. I'm Mark Spencer. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're watching from. And I'm joined by my usual compatriot, Steve Martin.
Hey everyone, glad you can join us. Yeah, I'm doing great. I'm doing great.
Good.
Glad that the snow's all melted off, and looks like we're on a trajectory toward a nice warm spring. If you haven't joined the show before, this is your first time, basically it's a simple format. We show a tip, a technique, or workflow, and then we answer your questions. We have a chat window. Feel free to just post whatever question that comes to mind. You'll also notice there's a little dollar sign at the bottom of the chat window. That is called a super chat button. And if you want to donate to the show, and it could be a nominal amount, $1, $5, $10, $20, whatever you want to give to help support the show, and you can go ahead and do that. What's also nice about the super chat feature is that it'll take your question and pin it to the top, and we will answer the super chat questions first. So if you absolutely have to get your question answered, super chat is the way to go. Okay, so what I want to talk about first is our contests. We had a raffle last week, and we were talking about the National Association of Broadcasters convention that's coming up in April. And Mark and I do a series of classes at this show. It's called the Post-Production World, and it's not just Mark and I. It's classes on lighting techniques, camera techniques, drone, 360, business classes, how to direct, how to produce, how to write.
It's huge. It's massive. It's
a massive workshop. And it's like a $1,200 value, and we gave it away. Well, we asked you to enter the raffle last week, and so this week we do have a winner. So I'm going to go ahead and bring up my keynote, and we'll start with NAB here. So a little bit about NAB 2019. So here we go. The winner is, drum roll, Terrence McCarthy. Now, Terrence, congratulations. You are the proud winner of a post-production world pass. So congratulations, Terrence. And so just contact us offline and we'll show you how to get your pass. Okay, a couple of other things since we're here. By the way, if you didn't win, you still win. Well, what do I mean by that? Well, you could, if you're going to NAB, you could still attend one of Mark's classes for free. All you need to do is go to Post-Production World there at the convention center and just mention me or Mark's name, and then you can take any one of our classes, and I've listed them here for you. So, for example, I'm doing a class on in-depth audio mixing from 3:30 to 6:30 on Saturday. Sunday, Mark's doing advanced color correction workshop from 9 to 11:30. Then on Sunday, I'm doing working smarter and faster in Final Cut Pro 10 from 12:30 to 1:45. And Mark's doing one on Monday, staying organized from 2 to 3:15. And then lastly, on Monday, I'll be doing a session called Creating a Graphic Toolkit in Final Cut Pro 10. So if you are going to NAB, you could still take one of our classes and just mention our name at where you sign up, or actually where you're registering for Post-Production World, and they'll give you a pass. So pretty cool. One other thing relative to NAB, and since we're getting close, is that there's this event called Faster Together. It was formerly called the Super Meet, and basically it's morphed into something that's much more around users. So it'll be filmmakers, editors, colorists. It's much more user-driven event rather than a marketing, manufacturer-driven event. And you'll want to, if you're going, this is something that you want to attend. You can get your tickets using the link there right on the screen. You'll want to do that now because it sells out. I'm positive it will sell out. And so you want to go to that link and get your tickets Tuesday night for the Rio. Okay, the last thing I want to cover is our RippleLIVE schedule that, because of NAB, Mark and I are going to be very busy prepping for the classes. So we're going to clutch back our RippleLIVes for this month. And so I wanted to show you, what our schedule is going to be over the next month. So we'll be skipping next week, but we'll be returning on Thursday, March 21st, skipping a week, then coming back April 4th. That's the week before NAB. And then the week of NAB, we'll be dark because of NAB. And then we'll be back on April 18th. So I just wanted to put that up there so you can know what to expect. And feel free to put, go ahead and feel free to put your suggestions in the info box below. We love it when you give us suggestions about what topics. At some point we're gonna maybe bring on some guests, and we'll have a lot to talk about after NAB. But go ahead and put those in there. We really appreciate it. It's going to be a lot of fun. All right. So this brings us to the first tip that I want to show you. Mark is actually reading your questions right now, so we'll be getting to those questions soon enough. The first tip I want to cover is regard to, am I looking over here? With regard to 360 video. Now, I know a lot of you are going, oh, 360, I don't shoot 360. But these 360 cameras are becoming more and more popular, not just for 360 viewing, but because they shoot everything, they shoot in all directions, that you can bring this into a standard HD project and then pick the portions of the sphere you want to use. So it's really like having multiple cameras pointed in every direction. I want to show you how to do that, but more importantly, I have a really cool thing to show you with regard to text that maybe you haven't thought about. Like, how do I integrate text into my 360 sphere so that when I animate it, when I work with it in a standard flat project like HD, how can I use the text to, like, when I move around, the text is automatically pinned to specific portions. It's pretty cool, and I want to walk you through that. So I'm going to go ahead and jump over to Final Cut Pro 10, and hopefully you see my interface. And I have a clip here of a recent, well, Mark and I were in New York City over the summer, and I went to the Brooklyn Bridge, as is obligatory for any tourist. But it was a beautiful, beautiful night. And I shot this with my GoPro Fusion camera. And you can see it's in this weird stretch format that's called equal rectangular format. So the first thing I want to do is I want to put it into a project that's 360. So I'm going to right click on it. And this is a really good technique for anybody who has 360 footage. Select new project, and under video, under format, choose custom. This is amazing because as soon as you choose custom, the resolution will automatically be auto-filled. So Final Cut is saying, oh, that's a 5120 by 2560 clip, and it's a 2997p clip, which is great. And then I'll go ahead and name this project NYC. I'll just call it NYC for now. And everything's cool here, and I go ahead and click OK, and I'll create the 360 project. I'm going to go ahead and open the 360 viewer, which Option Command M, and you can see here, actually.
Why don't you close your browser too, just to make a little more room?
Yeah, you know what? I think I messed up. Let's do this one more time. I love doing this live because I can mess up too. I messed up. So I undid that. So new project, I forgot. I left off a critical step. So I go to custom. You have to choose 360 monoscopic. That's the key, because it was normal. That's why I wasn't seeing it in the 360 viewer. So now I'll call this NYC, and we'll try this once again. Click OK. And now you can see I have the 360 sphere here, right?
Now you can navigate, yeah.
Right, now like you said, now I'll close the browser. So there's me standing on the Brooklyn Bridge, and there's a beautiful night and over the East River. It's beautiful. Okay, so what I want to do is add some text to this. So what I'm going to do is just move over here, move the plate over here somewhere, hit Control-T, add a text, and I'm going to go ahead and make this a little bit bigger. And I'm going to double-click on the text item, and then I'm going to move this over here, and I'm just going to type out. And by the way, this is great if you wanted to do virtual tours and you wanted to like put text over certain things. So I'm going to put East River, and let me move this over a little bit. It's a little bit big, so I'm going to jump back into Inspector, And I'm going to reduce the size of that just to make there we go. That's better. And so I've got a text. And what's great about this is that text is pinned to that location. So I never have to worry about it like moving or whatever. It's like pinned to that specific coordinate within the spherical coordinate system. So now I want to add another text. So I'm going to option drag this upward and make a copy. So I have a copy of that text. And I'm going to grab this East River. I'm going to drag this over here, over the arches heading towards Brooklyn. And I'll go over here and I'll double click the text. I'll type in Brooklyn,
Brooklyn.
You know what's funny? It's like I'm typing O, and it's typing R. What the heck? All right, let's try it over here. Have you ever had that, Matt? Brooklyn. There we go. Hey, Brooklyn.
Yeah.
Yo, Brooklyn.
When in doubt, type in the text field.
Yeah. Sometimes it gets weird, and you just type in the text field. So bottom line is now, I have these two texts that are pinned. I have East River over here, Brooklyn. Over there's the Manhattan Bridge. I can do all of that, but I just want to just give you the general workflow. Now, this is where it gets fun. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select everything, Command A, and turn this into a compound clip. Option G. I'm going to call this NYCC for compound clip, and click OK. So I've made it a compound clip. Now I'm going to open the browser, and you can see there's my compound clip. Now this is where it gets interesting, because if you aren't doing 360 video, you're going to want to put this into an HD or a 4K sequence and then animate and then do some various things as if you had multiple cameras. So I'm going to right click on this, choose new project. So right now I'm right clicking on the compound clip that I just created. Now I'm going to create a new project from that. And notice the video format, 1080p, 1920, 30p. This could be 4K. I'm just leave it 10. I'm going to call this NYC HD. So I know that's the HD version of the project. And then I'm going to click OK. So now I have the clip placed inside a 1080 project. Notice the viewer's blank because it's not a 360. The 360 viewer's blank because it's not a 360 clip anymore. So I'm going to go ahead and just turn that off to get back my screen real estate. But notice now, if I click this button here called Orient, I can move around the sphere within this, so I still have access to all that 360 data, and the text is still pinned where I originally pinned it in the 360 environment. So what I want to do,
you could animate that.
Yeah, and we're going to animate. Absolutely going to animate. Cool. I'm going to figure out. Yeah, so I'm going to like right there. I'm going to set. That's one of my play. I'm going to set my first animation. In fact, maybe I want to start like up here on these, like right here. Maybe I want to start there. And under orientation in the inspector, I'm just going to right click and choose add. And I've just added a bunch of keyframes at that place. Now I'm going to move the playhead maybe a second or so later. And then using my on-screen little pointer, I'm going to drag the image around and then just center up. Maybe right there's my East River, and maybe I get a little bit more of the city. So maybe something like that. So I've got so I'm animating from there, and then there's East River, and then I want to hold for a couple of seconds. So I'm going to actually add a couple more keyframes here. So essentially create some hold frames. Actually, I did that. There we go. Let me make sure. Sometimes, so you got to just watch where you're placing keyframes. So I'm going to play it there. I'm going to add some keyframes here, and then move the playhead a little bit further. And then I'm going to swing around and frame up the Brooklyn text there. Okay. So now I have this animation, and this is, remember, an HD project, and I'm using all parts of the sphere. So I'm starting here, and it animates over to the East River text, and then it's holding for whatever, and then it animates over to the Brooklyn Bridge.
Nice. Right. And it kind of looks like the text is tracking to it because it's placed in that 3D scene, but you didn't have to do any tracking.
Correct. In fact, the special this week I wanted to let you guys know is I have a tutorial on 360 editing. It's $59. So today only, you can get, or the next 24 hours, you can get our 360 video editing for 50% off. We have it. I'll bring up, Travis is going to bring up a code. So right down there, and below my window is a code, 50% off, and you can learn all of my awesome 360 video editing techniques. So Right there. Hope you like that chip. I thought that's a fun way to use 360, Mark. It really is.
I think it's fantastic. And one question that came up about that was, well, not really a question so much as if your 360 camera were moving, the text wouldn't stick. You know, it would move with the camera. You would need to track it at that point. But often with 360, you don't want to move the camera. You know, you make people a little seasick if you're moving it. Yeah. But it's a great way to make you know, text locked into a scene. And I love the idea of shooting everything in the scene and producing flat video where you can basically direct and post like that. It's a really great way to use 360.
Well, and you know, to that end, I think that's the way a lot of people are using 360 cameras now. They're not really using them. I talked about this last week, and I mean, it's really cool to look around. I do that, but most people are going to be maybe using it this way. They're going to be using it in standard projects. And one of the things that I should point out with the GoPro Fusion, if you own one, that's what I do. I own that one. They just a couple of weeks ago they introduced an update to the GoPro Fusion. Their camera now shoots in 24 frames per second, which is huge because if you want to integrate your GoPro Fusion clips in your HD timelines with other 24p content, that footage will match. So that's something really new.
And it takes less disk space too.
Yeah, and also too with the GoPro Fusion they increased the resolution to 5.7 from 5.2 K if you're shooting in 24. So if you're a Fusion owner, there's another reason to upgrade your software.
Nice. Yeah. So that was an excellent tip, Steve. Thank you very much. We've got a good crowd here. Not a lot of questions, so a lot of people saying hi. That's awesome, and I'm glad you guys like the tip. So if you have other questions, let us know. There was a question about batch exporting to different locations. So you want to batch export a bunch of clips, but send some of them to one folder, some to another folder, and I believe you have to set those up as separate batches. But then the question was there a way I can send everything to compressor and set up a batch and compressor that would then send exports to different locations? And I believe those still need to be separate jobs in compressor. Steve, you can correct me or anybody else in there. But
no, I can set those up. No, you have to create separate jobs with separate what they call destinations. What's cool in compressor, we should do some more stuff on compressor. It's just one of those things that it's there, but it really has a lot of really great workflow pluses. And one of them is you can create custom destinations. So you can build a bunch of destinations ahead of time and then quickly apply them. So you don't have to like create those destinations each time. I don't have that set up, but absolutely you can do that. You can have a bunch of custom destinations. You just drop on your different jobs and boom, those will get spit out to whatever target drive or folder that you want. So really good point.
Nice.
All right. So
one thing I thought. Go ahead.
No. You go. No, you go.
Oh, I was just going to mention while we're seeing folks post some questions here. One thing in the news that you guys might have seen this past week. In fact, I think it was day before yesterday. Is Grant Petty from Blackmagic did like a half-hour video on a bunch of updates on various capture cards and other things. But in the middle of it, thank you very much, Barry Stone, for your contribution. That's very, very much appreciated. Appreciate you supporting the show. If anybody else wants to support the show, you can click that little super chat, that little $ at the bottom. Any amount is great and helpful. Anyway, so Blackmagic, in the middle of that fairly long, half-hour long discussion about different updates, a lot of it was very interesting. He kind of slipped in there that the Cinema DNG format, they're not going to support it anymore because now they have this Blackmagic RAW format, and the Pocket Cinema camera will now support Blackmagic RAW, and they're going to move away from Cinema DNG, which shouldn't be a huge surprise to anybody, and it's been a sort of a difficult format to work with. Especially in Final Cut Pro, it's, comes in as an image sequence. You can still work with it, but it's a little more complicated. So I thought that was great news, very interesting news, and not surprising, but a bunch of great updates from Blackmagic this week on the Blackmagic camera and the Ursa Mini, as well as some capture card information.
I think the Ursa Mini now shoots at what? Was it 300 frames a second?
Yeah, if you're shooting 1080 at 300 frames per second and 150 at 4K.
That's fantastic. You know, it's a great camera. I've shot with Ursa Mini. We've shot many things with it, and we love that camera. The only downside for me is it's a heavy camera. It's a big, bulky. You can't, you know, you have to have the heavy duty sliders to work with it. You've got, you know, CFast cards if you want to capture. Well, it's not going to capture cinema DNG anymore. So, but yeah, it's you know, it's more robust, you know, bigger camera. That's the only thing that I kind of like the Pocket camera for. It does a lot of what that does, but it's just in a smaller form factor.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Couple questions. So Reginald asks about he says he likes the warp stabilizer in Premiere. How does it compare and work in Final Cut Pro 10? So Final Cut Pro doesn't have a warp stabilizer. It has camera stabilization. That's quite good. Depending on the situation, you need to play with a little bit because it has multiple different stabilization options. And Steve, I don't know if you have anything up to that you could demo that at all, but I can just mention that the stabilizer that's built into Final Cut's quite good, and it has multiple different options, whether you want to just steady shaking footage or lock it down completely. It's got both an inertial cam version and another version of stabilizing. So the thing is, just try that out and see how that works for you. I generally find it very, very effective. A related question is what's your solution to working? Actually, it's not related at all. But this is Eric Dietrich says, what's your solution for working on a clip or a section of a sequence in Final Cut Pro 10 that needs to be worked on inside of After Effects? My personal solution is I generally use Motion to do that. I don't use After Effects. For me, Motion is faster and easier to do things unless they're very, very complex than After Effects. So I would basically use Motion to do that. And you know, someone's going to bring it up. You cannot send the clips over to Motion and work with them that way. It just doesn't. That round tripping process doesn't work that way that it used to many years ago. You know, 5 years ago now. Motion's built for adding titles, transitions, and effects into Final Cut. So you need to bring those clips in separately to Motion and work on them. That being said, there is an application from Westplate we talked about last week, and I did not see it in the comments when I was researching for the show, but I will find it and bring it up. But there is an app for sending your Final Cut Pro timeline to After Effects. So you will have your full Final Cut Pro timeline that you selected available in After Effects. And then you can do all your stuff in After Effects if that's where you're comfortable, and then render that back out as a clip to drop in on top in Final Cut Pro 10. And either after the show or if I have a downtime for a moment, I'll try to find it now, or maybe somebody else will jump in, because he came out with that product just in the past couple of years to move from Final Cut Pro to After Effects.
Yeah. So a couple of things I want to say about exporting. And if you're going to be exporting just straight away from Final Cut Pro 10, you just choose export out using the master format. So if your clips are ProRes, you'll export in ProRes. If you just want to bring the clip, if you're not bringing individual layers from Final Cut or connected clips or whatever into After Effects, render out the highest possible codec using either ProRes or ProRes ProRes. What is it? There's so many flavors now. Yeah, ProRes. What's the next one above that? HQ.
You mean HQ?
Yeah, yeah. So that's what I do. Todd mentioned my coffee with Steve. I just want to do a quick plug for that. Thanks, Todd. Every other week, I do a Friday show that's similar to this. It's geared towards beginners. People are new to Final Cut, or people that have a workflow area they're stuck in. And it's called Coffee with Steve. And I literally have my cup of coffee and I go through your questions. And we do that every other Friday. You can check our website. And I just wanted to point that out that's just another way that you can interact with us live. Okay, so looking back at the questions here. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so a couple quick ones. Is there a plugin for tracking? This is Victor Villagomez. Thanks, Victor. Is there a plugin for tracking Final Cut Pro 10? There are multiple plugins for tracking in Final Cut Pro 10, absolutely. So one is from Coremelt. That's Coremelt. You can look them up, Coremelt. It's called TrackX. And they actually have several products that, depending on what you want to track, there's one called SliceX. If you're tracking color corrections, SliceX. There's also TrackX. There's also one called DriveX, where you can track particles and things to your project. So that's a big one. There's also one from There's also one available within FX Factory. So if you use FX Factory for anything, you can look for a tracker in there. Sorry, the name is escaping me right now. And there's a third one. I'll, again, look it up on a break. But there's multiple trackers for Final Cut Pro 10 that you can use to do tracking in Final Cut. And the other one, by the way, is motion. So you can do planar tracking and point tracking in motion. So if you don't want to buy a third-party plugin, you can use motion. Of course, you don't have that round tripping capability. You need to open the clip separately in motion to do that. So sometimes it's nice to work right within Final Cut Pro 10. Jim Pyle, thank you very much for the contribution, much appreciated. And by the way, that product I was referring to is not Automatic Duck, it's called something else, and because what they're talking about is moving the other way. So I'll research it and get back to you on that.
So Ben Broadbeck is asking if there's any tips for working with ARRI RAW inside Final Cut Pro 10. We've actually only shot one thing with the ARRI cameras, the smaller ARRI camera ones that looks like a little cube, and we shot with ProRes. I haven't really worked with ARRI RAW. I don't believe Final Cut 10 works with ARRI RAW. In fact, this is one of the things that I would like to see Apple open up, really, in more RAW formats. Really, the only RAW format that it currently works with is Red RAW. Of course, you need a plugin, and that might not be true. That's not true. You could work with the Canon C100, C200. They have their Canon has their own proprietary RAW format. It's literally funny now. I mean, Canon has their own proprietary Red, ARRI, and now Blackmagic, Apple. It's crazy. I like to joke. You know, what's great about standards? There's so many of them. Anyway, I was going to say that Final Cut Pro supports Red RAW, and it supports the Canon RAW Lite that you can shoot with a C200, but you have to have the plugin installed. There might be some other RAW formats I'm unaware of, but I don't think Final Cut works with ARRI RAW, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong. And that's something I'd like to see Apple open up. I'd love to be able to see Blackmagic RAW work inside Final Cut 10. I don't know what the political ramifications of that. I mean, Apple has ProRes RAW now, or ProRes. Yeah, ProRes. What is it called? They have their light. I'm drawing a blank on what
ProRes
their
LT. ProRes LT.
No, it's not ProRes LT. It's a RAW format. Apple. They just introduced.
Sure. ProRes RAW, right?
ProRes RAW. Thank you. Yeah. So, so all of these formats I think need to be supported ultimately in Final Cut Pro 10. I do.
Hey, Wes Plate just emailed me. So here it is directly from the horse's mouth. Okay. I was listening to Ripple Training Live 11 and caught you mentioning live at 11. It sounds like we're in the news. Live at 11. Caught you mentioning Final Cut Pro to Motion and Final Cut Pro to After Effects. Automatic Duck's XimportAE translates a Final Cut Pro timeline to After Effects. So that comment was correct. I apologize. And then Automatic Duck's Xsend Motion translates a Final Cut Pro timeline to motion. That's what I was thinking of, Xsend Motion to go to motion. So that's XimportAE to go from Final Cut to After Effects, and Xsend Motion to go to motion. And if I go back, who mentioned that before? Somebody else. Oh, Edgar Davis, mentioned, and Scott Gillies mentioned it as well. So two ways you can move to either After Effects or motion. So pick the one you want to use and go with that.
So Robert Burgi asked you if you can customize Titlemations.
Yeah, so here's the deal with any kind of plugin, especially plugins distributed through FX Factory, which we use for a variety of our plugins, are protected for piracy reasons because, unfortunately, we live in a world where people rip stuff off. So you can't directly open those templates in Motion to modify them or save your own versions of them. So what you do is if you've customized like a Titlemation template, which was the question was about, and want to save that, what I like to do is I create a project of saved customized titles. And that project just has those titles in a timeline. And then I can copy paste those to anything. And in fact, I have a library of just custom presets of a variety of custom things that I like to use in other projects. So that library I just have and can have open and always accessible, and I just copy paste those customized titles and other things. I even say custom corrections and other things in there, and can copy paste them into other projects in other libraries. So hopefully that answers that. Thank you, Brett. Thank you, Spankman. Thank you, Chris Fenwick. Very much for your contributions. Hugely appreciated. And Matt Sobel, yes, Crumple Pop Easy Tracker. That's the one I was trying to think of. Exactly. That's another one. I have used that. That works pretty well. But a lot of stuff I'll just go ahead and do in motion as well. But thank you very much for that.
Will Chris from France, I'm going to answer your question. There are a lot of audio effects in FCP. Do you use them? Absolutely, I use them. I use them all the time. There's some great filters inside Final Cut Pro 10. In fact, a lot of them are directly plugins that came from Logic Pro. I mean, I use the channel EQ all the time. I use the limiter. I use the compressor. I use noise gate. That's just 4. And they're very good. I use them all the time for our tutorials and working through the audio. So one of the things we are working on, if you want to just cut back to my interface for a second, I showed this earlier. I showed you our extension app that's coming called Editing Faster in Final Cut Pro 10, where you'll be able to have all of these great tips and tricks right at your fingertips, right within Final Cut. In fact, I like to refer to our tutorials as Learn Final Cut from within Final Cut. And the reason I'm showing you this again is because we're working on another one that's going to be all about audio. We're going to have a whole list of audio plugins that will appear here. We're going to show you how to use them, and we're going to have examples. And so all of the plugins, the aforementioned plugins that I just mentioned, and some even some other ones. So they will be here, and you'll have a kind of a compendium of tips and tricks on how to use those plugins directly from within Final Cut Pro 10. So look for that. This one's coming first, and then later the audio. Yes.
Steve, can you just show how you open that again? Because I don't know if it switched to the UI in time. Just show how that opens up from the little extension pop-up menu there within Final Cut.
Absolutely. So Final Cut Pro introduced an extension workflow in 10.4.4, and it's a little gear button. If you click that, all the extensions apps will show up here. There's Frame.io, and then we've been creating extension. We created a free one on the launch time called Getting Started. You can go up and download that right now. It's for beginners, but we're working on a series of them. And here's you access it right from this. You just click that, and then the UI opens here. It's completely dynamic, so you can scale it, you can move it around, and so our audio plugin app or extension app is coming. I just don't have a date for it. This one's going to be coming out hopefully in a week or two, and then the other one. So I'll have a special pricing for everybody that watches this show. When this comes out, I'm going to have an amazing special introductory pricing for you guys. So just letting you know about that. Okay.
Excellent. TDI Media mentioned mCallouts and mCallouts 2 being simple tracking plugins, and I just want to be clear about one thing. Those are titles that are trackable. It's not a tracking plugin to apply tracking to your own titles. It is a titling plugin that has tracking built in to track its own titles. It's not built as a tracker to track your own stuff. I just want to be careful about that, because sometimes people confuse the functionality of a plugin that's meant to be used on any of your own content from a plugin that has functionality built into its own content and can't be applied somewhere else. Canon Raw Light for the C200, yep, absolutely. Thoughts about CommandPost? This is a good question. God, what's his name? You remind me of the guy who's developing CommandPost. Great guy. So there's a for people who don't know, and this was from Krzysztof Sajkowski. Mentioned CommandPost. CommandPost is a little sort of a plug-in to Final Cut Pro that opens up additional functionality. It issues menu items and adds a lot of functionality to Final Cut. I purposely don't use it personally because I need to know exactly what Final Cut does on its own, and it will confuse me just because the amount of teaching we do in different environments. So I don't modify Final Cut Pro's functionality with that product, but I can tell you I've heard many very good things about it, and I've heard anybody say it broke anything, so I think it sounds like something worth trying out if you're interested in expanding things that Final Cut can do. And I think you can just search. I know there's a Facebook group that talks about it.
So I wanted to bring up something that Todd Gallant mentioned, and I think it's worth mentioning, is that extension button with the little puzzle piece. People wondering how does that get there? Or how does that even? I don't know. It's not exactly clear, and there's two problems with it. There's actually two problems with it right now. The first problem I want to mention is that as far as I know, there's no place where you can go. I mean, you can go to Apple's site and you can see, I think, Frame.io and then Shutterstock, but there's no place where you like, here's all of the list of like awesome plugin extensions that work within that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's something that I think I'm going to be building soon. Just like, here's all the extensions that are currently available. That'll be helpful. But to answer your question about how do they appear? Here's how they appear. Once you download the app, and by the way, the extensions only, they're tied into the Mac App Store. So you have to produce an app for the Mac App Store and then download it from the Mac App Store and then launch it once. All you have to do is launch the app as a standalone app once, close the app. Then once you launch Final Cut Pro, then that little puzzle piece icon will appear and the extension app will appear in that menu. So I know it's kind of weird. That's not intuitive. You wouldn't necessarily know that. But that's how you do it. You just launch that app that's extension compatible, and it'll be there. So, anyway.
Right. So you have to get one to start it going there.
Yeah.
Chris mentioned that we should show the App Store just to show the content we have there. I thought it wasn't a bad idea. So I thought maybe I could share my screen and just show that real quickly. Because we're mentioning the App Store items. So I don't know if my screen's up there, but I just went to the App Store. You can see the top left corner there. I typed in Ripple Training. And we've got a variety of apps, and you may see more of these in the future get integrated into Final Cut Pro 10. But we've got lessons for iMovie. We've got lessons for working iPhone production, for doing iPhone production, getting started in Final Cut, core training for Final Cut, lessons for motion. So basically, we have apps as another venue for our tutorials, and these are generally more consolidated, getting started tutorials for folks that are finding about us through the App Store rather than through our website. Just so, there you go. We've got some stuff up there.
Yeah. All right. So, go ahead.
Nope.
Just looking at questions here. Justine Paula Robillard says it should install the apps into the background of FCP and not as a standalone app. Well, it's annoying, I suppose, but that's just the way it works. Yep, that's how it works. So
here I can answer this one here from PostProd09, adding a transition to connected clips and not having it affect the clips in the primary storyline. So we have talked about this before, but just very quickly, certain transitions will do that, certain ones won't. It depends if the motion template it was created from kept the placeholder alive in there. So all you need to do is open a copy of that transition up, turn off that placeholder in motion, and then it won't affect the background. That's really the easiest way, is to make a separate copy and do that.
Yeah.
What else do we have here? Should I do my little tip thing?
Do your tip.
All right, I will screen share again. Let's see. Getting this down. Oh, stop. I'm still screen sharing. Look at that. Okay, great. So there. So let me know if you can see my screen for good to go here.
Yeah, hide the menu bar there, Mark.
Hide the menu bar?
Command Control F.
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
Okay. So here I'm in Final Cut Pro, and this relates to a question last week about LUTs.
Mark, stop. You need to do full. You need to do full screen because we're seeing the Final Cut Pro menu bar, which creates weirdness.
Control Command F.
There you go.
There.
That's it.
That's weird. I'd done Command Control F twice. Okay, there we go. So what I want to talk a little bit about is using LUTs or lookup tables in Final Cut, because it came up last week and I just talked through it. I want to show you a quick demo. So here I have a clip shot with a Blackmagic pocket camera. And the thing I want to make clear about is Final Cut Pro uses LUTs in two different ways, in two different places, and what it calls camera LUTs versus creative LUTs. So normally when you import a clip that was shot in a log format, Final Cut will automatically sense that if it's got the metadata tagged and will apply the appropriate camera LUT. What do I mean by that? Well, with this clip selected or with the playhead over it, I'm in the inspector, and I'm in the third tab of the inspector, the information inspector, and I'm in the general tab. If you're in general view, if you're in the basic view, this won't appear. So you need to go to at least the general view, and then there's this menu here, camera LUT, and often this will automatically be assigned. So the purpose of a camera LUT is to place that log encoded clip back into the Rec. 709 space so it looks like it did when it was shot. And you can use this for many things. You can just use it because it looks nicer while you're working and turn it off and grade manually. Or you could use it as your actual grade. So in this case, you need to pick the LUT that was designed for that camera. This is not a creative decision at this point. This is using the lookup table produced by the camera manufacturer to take that log encoded clip, whether it's Canon or Blackmagic or Sony or Panasonic or ARRI, it doesn't matter, and apply that. Normally they'll be available in here. If they're not, you can install them. In fact, I'm just going to apply this Blackmagic design film, and you'll see immediately that we get this expanded dynamic range, increased saturation, and this should look basically the way it was when it was shot. If for some reason the camera LUT for you is not available here, you can click this pop-up menu, go to Reveal in Finder, and it will show you the location of all these. And sorry about the other junk in the way here. Let me just close those. So it brings up that folder, and we can see here where that's stored in your home, library, application, support, pro apps, camera LUTs. But you don't even need to remember that, but you can install any of your own camera LUTs here. So that's step one or part one, is you have the option of applying the camera LUT to look at the footage in Rec. 709 to look at how it should have been shot. Sometimes you're done. You could do that and you're done. You don't even need a color grade. You don't have to. You could turn that off and you could grade this clip manually. All right, but I'm going to leave that on. So the second category of lookup tables are creative LUTs, creative lookup tables. And the purpose of those is to create a look, to basically do color grading in a one-click kind of way. And the way you do that in Final Cut is you go to your effects browser, and then bottom right corner here, you go to the color category, and there's a custom LUT effect. So I'm going to apply that to this clip, and then go to the video inspector as opposed to the info inspector. So now you see I've got custom LUT effect applied here, and then you need to choose that lookup table that you're going to apply. Now by default there won't be anything in here because these are lookup tables that are not produced by camera manufacturers, but they're lookup tables that you've obtained from some source, and that source could be from DaVinci Resolve or from 3D LUT Creator, or you've downloaded them from somewhere on the website. You've purchased LUTs from various vendors, or you've downloaded free ones. It doesn't matter. And in fact, how do you install them? If you've obtained LUTs, you go to this Reveal in Finder, just like we did with the camera LUT, and it has a different location. See, we had camera LUTs before, now we have custom LUTs, and that's where this is located. Library, application, support, pro apps, custom LUTs. And I've got a few I've thrown in here just to so you see how they work. And then you can apply a custom LUT. Now, before you do that, you need to know if this custom or creative LUT was designed to be applied to a clip in Rec. 709 or in log. So I'll click this pop-up menu, and some of these will have Rec. 709 in the name. So this set of LUTs say Rec. 709. So that's telling you this was designed to be applied to a clip that's already been put into Rec. 709 color space. So I would apply this LUT on top of the camera LUT that's already been applied. So for instance, I could select this Revenant look or this Moonrise Kingdom look to the footage here. But it's key to understand whether these creative LUTs are meant to be applied to Rec. 709 footage, because if they're not, if they're meant to be applied to log footage, you would want to turn off that original camera LUT before applying these. All of these LUTs, just to reinforce this, are optional. Okay, it's a creative decision. Even to apply the original camera LUT is a creative decision because you can color grade without it. There's more involved. It's a fairly deep concept, and I go into more depth in the advanced color correcting tutorial, but that's a basic overview of how to work with LUTs in Final Cut. And the key is to understand the difference between camera LUTs and creative LUTs.
So there was a question about covering some plugins, in particular the Motion VFX MO2 plugin. that is one product that I've been meaning to just dive into and really explore. It looks amazing. The kind of the real-time 3D rendering engine. I'm pretty impressed with Simon and his team have created. Yes, I've thought about doing a tutorial on it, on just like maybe an extension app that shows how to use it. So if that's something that you might be interested in, let us know. But I really just need to dive in and see what it can do first. And then the way I work is like, if I'm really impressed and I really like something, like, all right, I gotta cover this in a tutorial. So I'm aware of that plugin. I just haven't had time to dive into it. But yes, I think it's definitely worth exploring some of the different creative options in that particular plugin. All right, so there was another question about, well, not a question, it was a comment. Infinity Photo is a great tool to create LUTs. I've never used Affinity Photo to create LUTs. Didn't even know you could.
That's cool. That's very cool.
That's great.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just going to mention there's something called 3D LUT Creator, which is another useful thing for creating LUTs, and DaVinci Resolve you can use to create LUTs and export in the free version of DaVinci Resolve. So there's a lot of different options for creating LUTs.
Dan Zvoboda, I don't know if that S is silent or not. Zvoboda, or V is silent. Have you guys ever used CornerSync to keep projects in sync across servers and drives? I was contacted by that company a few weeks ago, and they said, you know, it was one of the principals, and they said, we're going to try this out. And it seemed like it was an open source piece of code. It looked really interesting, so you wouldn't have to like, well, I haven't played with it, but yes, I'm aware of it. It's just one of those things that gets put on the shelf over here, like things that we need to look at. But no, I haven't actually played with it, but it's something we're looking at. So the XML export question. So Brent Segura Bowers has asked, have you guys ever covered the various options for XML? This is a really good question, and I want to cover this in much more detail than I'm about to show you, but just so our audience can reference what you're asking, let's go to my interface really quick. What Brent is asking about, or is asking, is that when you go to export an XML file from Final Cut Pro 10, you go File, Export XML, you have these options that most people don't know. It says Metadata View. Right now it's set for General. But if you go to this pop-up, you can choose the metadata view options that get exported with that XML. Here you can see basic, extended EXIF, IPTC, all these different things here. So what determines what get exported, what metadata gets exported, is really defined by this panel over here, this pane. So if you have a project selected, notice you can choose, these are called metadata view sets. So if I choose basic, I'm just getting my video rolls, my start, my end, my duration. But then I do extended, and you'll notice that the metadata list expands, and there's more information that's included with that metadata set. And why is that important? Because if you were working with, say, an asset manager or something that could read all those different options from the XML file, this is an option here. You could just say, look, I want to export with that XML everything that's in the extended view for that project. And Mark mentioned a few weeks ago, the beauty of XML, it's not really designed as an EDL per se. It's really designed to hand off data to third-party apps. So if you needed to get your Final Cut Pro timeline to resolve, or you needed to get it over here to this other app, XML is the glue that makes that happen. And I think the reason Apple put that in, I think it was a few versions back, is that asset managers, different data asset managers were able to read this XML, this different XML data. CatDV comes to mind. For example, if you're a CatDV user and you manage all of these assets, if you create an XML file, that particular program should be able to read your extended metadata views, your extended metadata views of what you select here. So that's my essential answer, is really designed to embed more metadata information in the XML file that a third-party app can read. So that's my answer.
Just to follow off of that, Bryce Bagwell asked, how hard is it to port and edit out of Final Cut Pro 10 to DaVinci Resolve for color grading? And Bryce, it's dead simple. It's really not difficult at all. I go in detail. Actually, I have a advanced color correction in DaVinci Resolve tutorial at rippletraining.com, and part of that tutorial covers how to do exactly that. And I mean, basically, you do exactly what Steve just described. You export XML, and you can just use the general. You don't have to use more than that. And then you, in Resolve, you import that XML, and everything comes in. So not everything. I should qualify that. Your clips will all come in. Your titling won't. Any color corrections besides color board won't, which usually I would turn those off anyway because you're doing the color correction. The reason you're doing this is to do the color correction Resolve. But it's actually surprisingly easy to do. It's really not complicated, and I'd recommend just trying it out because DaVinci Resolve's free and you've got Final Cut. Just give it a shot and check it out. And if you're into it, check out our training on how to use Resolve if you want to sort of expand your capabilities for color correction. Although, just to piggyback that on another question, somebody asked, are you recommending using Final Cut Pro for color correction from that LUT discussion? And absolutely, I recommend using Final Cut Pro for color correction. I don't know if the questioner meant instead of using the LUT. That really depends on the circumstances. There's no one answer fits all, whether you use your camera LUT as a starting point for your color correction, or you turn it off and just grade the log footage. Some people have a preference to do that. There is a potential technical issue about applying the camera LUT and getting clipping that is not recoverable when you then do your own grading for shots that were overexposed. So there's situations where you may want to grade without applying the camera LUT. You can even take the camera LUTs and apply them as creative LUTs by dropping them in that folder and avoid that issue so that you can color correct and then apply that camera LUT after the fact. So very different workflows on whether you should use LUTs or not, or color correct or not. But in terms of working in Final Cut, I find Final Cut works for 95% of what I need to do for color correction because of the color wheels, the curves, the shapes, the color masking. Everything in it is very, very strong. Just a few things I consider going to Resolve for are tracking. If I really need tracking for color correction, the tracking there is excellent. And there's some really good face refinement features and some things like that that you can do, noise reduction, things like that that are available there that I can't necessarily get the same level of results that I want in Final Cut. But for 95%, Final Cut's color correction tools are excellent.
All right, so some clarifications. Robin Kurtz jumped in, and I wasn't aware you had a bunch of Motion MO2 tutorials, but you want to check out Robin's site. He says they're comprehensive, so that means he goes into a lot of depth. So I don't have his website here, but you can check it out. Thanks, Rob. Thanks, Robin, for pointing that out. I think the question was, you guys going to produce one? Possibly, but I haven't had time to play with it yet. So, but it does look very cool. Okay, so there was a question about multicam, and I think let's see here, right? Let's go ahead. Yep. SMD. How best do I automatically create a multicam clip of musicians playing a song, 3 camera views and 1 audio track? Problem seems to be that the master audio track spans includes many songs. I think I know what you mean. I think what you're saying is that when you cut to the different angles, it's cutting to the audio for that particular angle rather than using the song that they're actually lip syncing to. You might want to put in some more clarification, but that's an easy fix in the multicam editor. You just make sure that the main song is set as an angle, and then you use the buttons at the top and you choose what angle you're switching to, and it'll always use that angle as the track for your song. And I could set that up for you, but I think that's what you mean.
I've got it.
Yeah. You got what? You got what?
I have it. Well, I have it available if I just opened up a project if they wanted to see kind of how that works.
It's funny. I have the exact same project open on my computer as you do, but I want to get a little bit more clarification. I think he means that, but we'll see.
Okay. Let's see what they say.
Okay. So how do I send multicam project with 6 audio channels to ProTools? Well,
X to Pro.
X to Pro. That's a plugin. X to Pro will then take your audio. You're going to want to send out a baked version of your multicam timeline anyways for Pro Tools Editor. They're going to want your cut, just the video, and I would recommend doing a timecode burn at the bottom. So you're going to want to give your Pro Tools Editor two things. Although a lot of times they don't necessarily have. It's nice to have a video that they're referencing. But you're going to want to spit out a video with a timecode burn, and then you could use X to Pro, which is a plugin that will then take all of your rolls, and it will spit them out as literally essentially the separate audio tracks that a Pro Tools Editor can open as a session. And you'll have all the data, and they can work with your split tracks in Pro Tools and mix to your picture, and then give you back a stereo file for you to drop back in Final Cut Pro 10. That's how typically it's done. So, all right, good question. So, the last episode of my pod, Chris, the last episode of my podcast is Simon Promotion as a guest. All right, a lot of stuff about MO2. You guys definitely want to check that out. So, Mark Castillo, thank you for your video on Resolve in a Rush, episode 21, working with Blackmagic Raw. Very helpful. Mark, that was your tutorial on how to work with Blackmagic Raw.
Oh, yeah. Cool. Good. You're welcome. Hey, Bryce asked another question. Is creating a multicam clip the only way to marry separately recorded audio to a piece of video? And the answer is no. If you just have, if you've done dual system audio where you have one camera and you've got audio recorded on a separate audio device, you create what's called a sync clip. Synchronized clips. Just select both the video clip and select the audio clip, right click and choose create sync clip, or create, what's the word for it? Synchronized clips, or Option Command G, and you've got a sync clip. It also will optionally mute the audio from the video clip, because usually you just want to hear the audio from the audio clip, the audio device that recorded it. And then you can, of course, change it after the fact. So if you only have one video clip that you want to sync to audio, definitely do synchronized clips.
There was a question by Mark Castillo about, is there a way that Final Cut Pro 10 could show the bit depth of a clip? You know, like in the column view of the inspector, like of the browser. Is there any way that it can show the bit depth? I don't think so, but I haven't. No, I'm not sure. So if you guys, anyone out there knows what quick way to show bit depth within Final Cut Pro, go ahead and post that there, because that's one I'm stumped on. So I don't know. All right.
Even in the extended view, I don't see that.
Yeah. Great. So Edgar Davis asks, isn't XML to Logic 10 better? See, here's the thing about that. I've heard it's better now. I've heard it works a lot better. I know that in previous Mac Break shows, when we have shown sending audio rolls over to Logic, it's been less than exemplary. In fact, it's sucked, quite honestly, where stereo clips would get flagged as mono in Logic, and you couldn't break them into separate left and right. It was to a point where I didn't even recommend it. It was just useless. But apparently that's gotten better, and it's been a while since I've actually tried it. I've heard from several people that it works pretty solidly now. But the main thing for me was how it handled stereo when I send to Logic. It just didn't give me left and right. So if that's something you want to test and experiment with, let me know. But I'll have to look in that. But I definitely heard it's better. Speaking of which, go ahead. Speaking of which, I thought it would be fun if you guys out there have a specific workflow or plugin that you think we should cover on the show. Let us know, and if you want, make a movie and send us a link and say, let us watch you demo it, and say, this is why I think you should show this. And look, I've said several times, there's just no way we can know everything about every plugin and every workflow in the Final Cut Pro 10 universe. That's crazy. I mean, so that's why we rely on you to fill in some of the missing areas in our knowledge, and we would love to have some movies if you want, and you want to send us. This is something you want to see covered. So yeah.
I just want to address Simple Skiing's question. He says, I'm completely colorblind, as in monochromacy. Is there any general way to color correct where you can't see the colors, or a way to do a general grade? And a couple people answered use the scopes, and I think it's exactly right. I mean, it's a challenging thing. You can use the scopes to tell you, I mean, first of all, you'll be able to get your dynamic range and contrast if you just can see black and white. You can make sure you've got good dynamic range using the color correction tools without worrying about color at all. But then for color itself, if you set up your scopes a waveform with the RGB parade, you can use that to at least color balance your images. And you're not going to know for sure, but the scopes will give you a good guide that you're pretty close if you're able to balance the red, green, and blue channels out to each other. And that's actually covered in detail in the advanced color correction tutorial in Final Cut Pro 10 as well, if you want to go deeper in that. But I think you could at least feel like your clips are pretty close to color balance, good dynamic range, color balance. It'd be very hard for you to do something creative, I think, in terms of creating looks and pushing colors in certain directions if you're not seeing those colors. Yeah, try that out.
All right, so we're right at the top of the hour.
Oh, yes, we are.
We're at the top of the hour, so I just wanted to thank everyone. If we didn't get to your questions, we'll try to get to them after the show, or we'll try to get them next week. We do our best to try to get as many questions answered as possible. Want to remind everybody that we have 50% off on my 360 VR tutorial, and we'll post the link below. And actually, Travis can bring that up right here. 50% off on everything VR. If you missed the tip at the head of the show, you need to watch it. It's pretty cool. I want to point out that our new schedule, if I quickly jump over to, I'm going to quickly jump over to Keynote for a moment. This is our RippleLIVE schedule for the next few weeks because of NAB. Mark and I are going to be extremely busy prepping for that show. And there are the dates for the next, through April, at least through April 18th. And also want to point out if you're going to go to NAB, you might have missed this, you could still take one of our classes. Even if you didn't win the contest, you could take it. And any one of our classes, just mention Steve or Mark, and there's the list and when they take place. So, and then don't forget to register for Faster Together. And that's where we all meet and hang out, have beer, and just have fun. Have a lot of fun on Tuesday night. So, anyway, we want to thank you again for joining us live. Your questions were great. We really enjoy interacting with you guys live every week. And thank you again for supporting our show. Thank you for buying our tutorials, our plugins, and really supporting it. That must be Mark's dog. Anyway, so thanks again for watching another episode of MacBreak Live. We'll see you on episode 7.